I'll be speaking to Robert Coffey about a left-wing protest today inside the Left Forum. He's a supporter of the Socialist Workers Alliance of Guyana. He's presently living in Brooklyn. He's a member of the Social Service Employees Union, Local 371. Good evening.
Good evening, Stanley. How are you?
Okay, so what were you protesting and why?
Today we were protesting at the Left Forum, which you and others may know to be a yearly gathering of leftists in New York City, which is premised off the old Socialist Scholars Conference. And we're protesting because we felt that one of the plenary speakers they had for the closing ceremony, Ajamu Baraka, is someone who has a clear and distinct record of standing on the wrong side in the revolution in Syria.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the things he's said or done that makes you say that?
Well, he has a perspective of conspiracy pushing and a denial of the genocide, which through which he provides cover for Assad. So, for example, he's of the opinion that the elections that Assad held around 2014, where Assad himself was responsible for selecting his opponents and where he got a remarkable 90+% of the vote, legitimizes Assad as the president of Syria and also legitimizes the attacks he's carried out against the opposition and the innocent civilians.
And I understand he thinks that the only responsibility of the left is to criticize or oppose the U.S. imperialism.
Yeah, it's true. And he's been very swift in the aftermath of the protest to take to social media to reinforce that point. So I think the protest was an appropriate challenge for him to show us with facts and not conspiracies or far-out theories, like how the revolution, which started in 2011, is somehow a proxy war by U.S. imperialism.
So could you describe the protest?
Well, the protest started around 3 p.m. with many different people who are serious solidarity activists from a bunch of different organizations, such as the anti-war committees, my organization, the Socialist Workers Alliance of Guyana, the League for the Revolutionary Party, and Syria Solidarity, among others, coming out to the front of John Jay College on 10th Avenue and holding placards denouncing Assad and criticizing Left Forum for honoring Ajamu Baraka. And we started by holding those there and distributing leaflets that specify the things Baraka himself has said.
So that's how it started outside the building. Okay, then what happened?
And as the plenary started to seat people, what we did is we positioned ourselves at the front of the audience to be prominent. And as things started, and after all the speakers introduced themselves, we waited for Ajamu to speak. Like, we didn't know beforehand what order we were going to speak in, but he was actually the first person to speak. And as he took to the podium, we stood up in a silent protest and held up our banners, our Free Syria flags. I personally carried an Assad Out Now banner. Mm-hmm. And we walked from the front of the room all the way to the back, displaying our banners.
About how many would you say walked out?
I would say there were at least 12. There were at least 12 people walked out, mm-hmm. And there were more people who remained outside while we were inside to stage the walkout.
Did you get any reaction from the crowd?
Well, the reaction was mixed. The overwhelming reaction was stunned silence, and then there were a few shouts of "Sit down, stop it." And then once we started walking, as we walked out, others, at least 3 people looked at us to tell us thank you for your protest. And one person actually joined the walkout with us to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, there were the predictable calls of when Ajamu regained his voice. He, for example, said something about U.S. imperialism,
Mm-hmm.
and someone in the audience allegedly accused us of being CIA agents.
Uh-huh. I saw a post of his from 2017. It was called The Left Alliance with Imperialism. And he uses the phrase, the imperialist latte left, about us, implying we're all some rich people playing at politics. How do you feel about that charge?
Well, I think Ajamu has a very superficial worldview, and it has to do with a lot of like patriarchal masculinity that, and it's something I've heard recently repeated by Vijay Prashad as well, that you have to be hard. You have to be hard against imperialism. And what this means is that they support the leaders of third world countries who spout anti-imperialist rhetoric, regardless of their actions. And the softness they're referring to is us actually showing solidarity with the people in those struggles while also opposing imperialism. So I think his worldviews, more than anything, and his stances are a justification for his support for figures like Assad and his silence on figures like Putin.
Mm-hmm. Today, or I guess yesterday, he did a post on Facebook where he noticed that people were flyering, criticizing him. He described himself as a black revolutionary, and that the black revolutionaries have a right to put forward their own interests.
Right. And I was sure to respond to him on that. Is it okay if I share with you what I responded?
Absolutely, sure.
Okay, 1 second. Because I think, and this is a challenge I had put forth on Twitter to the black left some months ago, which is the fact that we're letting open Assadists dominate our movement, and particularly the anti-war movement. And given Ajamu's role as one of the leading figures in the Black Peace Alliance, I thought it was very important to push back and at least show, even if it's a very limited way online, the Syrian people that there's people in America, the oppressed people, stand with them. So I said, for example, on the post that it seems Ajamu is not just content to slander the Syrian people as agents of imperialism while Assad butchers them, but also he also slanders those who defend the Syrian struggle against Assad. Thus, he comes up with the unsupported claims that those of us who protest his genocidal denial and his palling around with the far right support U.S. imperialism. We actively oppose not just U.S. imperialism, but the world imperialist system, including Russia, about which Baraka has joked to say critically. And we oppose their decision to preserve the Assad regime by intervening in Syria against the mass uprising that began in 2011. The quote-unquote anti-imperialist left, including Ajamu, seems to want to trade the facts of the situation on the ground for conspiracies, such as those that the white helmets who rescue people from Assad's bombs are somehow propaganda agents, or that the Syrian revolution has no organic origins as a fight against a neoliberal dictatorship. So then I put a test to Ajamu to tell us what is real and what is fake in Syria. Yes or no? Did the Syrian revolution start because Assad's government tortured children for spray painting graffiti that criticized his rule? And lastly, I really took offense to Ajamu saying that, he supports Assad because of his unique perspective as a black leftist. And I myself, as a black leftist who's from a third world country, I wanted him to know that I called foul on that and see it as an attempt to cover up his defense of Assad. And based on my interests and experiences as someone who grew up in a third world country formerly ruled by a quote-unquote anti-imperialist government, the Burnham government of Guyana, which, much like Assad and his father before him, clamped down on political dissent anytime their rule was threatened by dissidents.
So where did you put this? Was this Twitter or Facebook?
This was on Ajamu's public Facebook page in response to his post about running into quote-unquote silly so-called leftists passing out flyers denouncing me as a supporter of Assad.
I see. And you also had some pretty good tweet about this. No, you spoke on one of the Left Forum panels, as I did. What were those? What were the panel that you did this on?
Well, it was a three-pack. Those of us who organized the protest also organized a three-stack of panels starting on Saturday, June 2nd at noon. And the first panel was about imperialism and anti-imperialism. And we were fortunate to have Syrians and Syrian Americans on that panel as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me a bit about yourself and about Guyana. I think a lot of Americans don't know about that country, even where it is.
Well, as a Guyanese, the running joke is that when we introduce ourselves to America, we have to say Guyana, not Ghana. It's in South America, not Africa.
Right.
And then, the truth is that Guyana, being the only English-speaking country geographically located in South America, while sharing more of a history culturally and politically with the English-speaking Caribbean, while having a population under 1 million, we're kind of taken for granted in the world. But I feel like Guyana's political history is very instructive, as I previously said, to understanding why people like Ajamu mistakenly support Dictator in the interest of anti-imperialism.
And you referred to someone who talked left but was kind of tyrannical?
Yeah, and that was Forbes Burnham, who ran the country from 1966 until his death in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that as part of the People's National Congress, which declared the country to be a cooperative socialist country, while nonetheless repressing dissidents and working people.
I hope we can talk about this at length at some point. Well, I want to thank you for talking to me and telling about this interesting protest.
Thank you so much, Stanley, and thank you for having me.